in something like this session, there's even more. I mean, it's like opened up because it's not, I mean, I've never done this session before. I don't know how I'm going to explain it. So I did give some thought. I did start to map it out. I came up with, the model is the personalities, and then I started to go through here, and then go through here, and then I started to, do some other things here, and I'm like, how does this all work? What's the science behind it? I came up with 3 A's, and it's amazing, acceptance, and accelerate. So those are the 3 A's to connect with anybody at any time, in any way, in a very spectacular way. And so Amy was talking, and she said, she's like, well, should I, what if he's a CEO of a medical, facility? I'm like, I'm fine with that. What if he's a teacher? I'm good with that. I mean, it doesn't matter. When you have a life vision of 7 billion people, you're like, okay, if I'm going to touch 7 billion people, touch them in a significant way in all areas of their life, I have got to go ahead and be an interesting person. I don't think inherently I'm an interesting person. I wasn't born like that, that's for sure. And in high school, I definitely was not an interesting person. At least I didn't know that I was. And I think the thing that's probably most significant for me that I have learned, and it took probably 20 years, 15 years of 10 to 15 years of executive coaching to recognize how very special and unique and gifted I am. There's just not anybody else on the planet like me. And it took me a long time to recognize that. I mean, people would tell me that. I'm like, yeah, talk to my wife, talk to my 7 kids. They're not going to be so impressed. I mean, yeah, no, that's not, I'm not that, yeah. And so it took me quite a while to recognize, no, you are different, Mark. You are very, very, very different. I mean, you think different, you act different. Really, everybody is. I'm reading the book, The 8th Habit, from Stephen Covey. So 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The 8th habit is finding your own voice and helping other people find theirs. I'm like, whoa, I could have written that book. That's exactly what I'm all about. Is, so I'm not real comfortable. I'm comfortable in talking in front of people, but it's not something that I really aspire to do. I'm totally okay, like with the Chicago group, I'm totally okay. I enjoy it more to see other people up there speaking than when I've learned, though, to be up in front of people, you've got to be a little narcissistic. You've got to be fun. You got to laugh at yourself. You got to know you're special. You got to, you got to have all that energy that kind of moves around. And that same principle is true in connecting with people. So in Amazing, again, that's where the spiritual connects in for me. David talks about, I think it's in the Psalms, about how God knew him in his mother's womb and how he was woven together in his mother's womb. And so for me, that just is amazing. I mean, I am blown away by that. The intricacies. People see my journal and they're like, you're like Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, the way that you do these things and see the world and put these things together. And I'm like, this right here is amazing? Not so much. I mean, you look at the human brain, you look at the eye, you look at our skin, that's amazing. A human being is amazing. And everyone is created in God's image. And so for me, it goes back to the very essence of who I am, the very spiritual core of who I am, that I believe that every single person on this planet God created in his own image, and that makes them special. And that is the essence, that is the core that I can connect with anyone at any age. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be a 3-year-old or it can be a 97-year-old. It can be somebody who's lived in poverty their whole life. It can be a president of the United States. And they're all equally amazing. Every one of them. And so when you have that kind of energy and passion, and I've learned as much, I've learned more from 5-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 6 months old than I have from PhDs. But PhDs are really interesting too, because I'm just going to ask them, first question I ask a PhD is, like, that is so cool, like, what's your PhD in? And they tell me, and I'm like, wow, that's really neat. Like, what would you say that the number one thing that you learn in your PhD? And I want to know. Because they're all willing to give me that information. I mean, think about how many years did they go ahead and spend gathering all that information? They just give it to me. I mean, they have the student debt, I don't.
Right.
I mean, they have all the time. Yeah. Why would I not tap into that? Right. I mean, it's just like, so there's all this knowledge. It's like Tom and I, when we get together, if he and I ever get to speak together at this group, or, you know, whatever group you're at, it's like we're two little boys. I mean, it really is. We think our wives and our children laugh with us. Sometimes we wonder if it's at us, but I mean, because we think like anything's possible. I mean, I asked him a few months ago, well, probably about a couple years ago, I said, do you want to run for president? Because I'd support you. He's like, yeah. He's serious, and so am I. It's like, yeah, sure, let's do it. I mean, and so there's something about being around Tom that keeps me young. You know, he's in his mid-60s. So I'm 50, I turned 50. He's 65 this year. But it's like we're like two little boys. We're always in discovery. I mean, when we've gone around the country and we're expecting 20, 30, 40, 50 people, and like nobody shows up. That hasn't happened very often, but once in a couple times it has. He and I are fine. I mean, we're totally good if nobody else shows up, because we like each other's company and how each other thinks. And that's really with anybody. You can tap into it. So first is amazing. Recognizing how amazing they are. And if you recognize how amazing they are, and when you understand the personalities, that gives you a big edge. Because you're like, whoa, that's really cool. That's kind of awesome energy. And then when you demonstrate how awesome they are, like how cool they are, it's not idle, like praise. It's not flattery. Like I never say anything to anybody that I don't mean all the way through. Never. Ever. Because it's, because it's just not right. It's against the moral. And so if I don't really see that in that individual, but you learn to see really cool things in individuals. When Peter said what he said, I thought, that's really cool. So my dad's a pastor. My mom and dad started churches, and in a new church, it's like you have nobody. Like there's nobody. I mean, nobody. And so when one person comes in, you learn to go greet that person. So, I mean, that's what you have to do. And then you better greet the second person. You better not let them out. And so there's one gentleman that left today, and Katrina was really good, where she went ahead and said, hey, goodbye, and he just kind of left sharp. I'm like, I almost want to interrupt the interruption, the conversation, get over there and talk to him, to engage with him. I mean, he seemed like he didn't enjoy it. That bothers me a lot. It's like, I mean, time is precious. You can save money and spend it later, but you can't save time and spend it later. So people's time is really valuable to me. I don't want to waste a second of their time. So I think some of the background and history that my parents had, that I had in growing up, to recognize the value of the individual person, being part of small things where, everybody's important. I think that's critical. With Teresa, it was really cool. Her and my energy. It's neat because I know what she's thinking. I mean, I know what she's thinking before she's even thinking it. And as soon as I exposed, here's a strategy, here's a process, I knew what she would be thinking. It's like, I thought I was special. How do I know that? Because I have 4 daughters. And that's where I learned that, is with 4 girls, 4 daughters. Every one of them is special. Every one of them. Every one of them is unique. And man, as a dad, if you're going to capture their heart, you would better learn how to find their uniqueness, and you better help every one of them to think that they're the only girl in your life. So that gave me tremendous skill, especially with women. Tremendous skill in understanding with women because of my 4 daughters. And the truth is, it's true with everyone. See, people have this amazingness about them that they don't know. And they're looking for somebody to see it in them and draw it out of them. And so, many years ago, I had 4 executive assistants. All of them were women in their mid-20s. And the dynamics of all 4 of them and how they interplayed with one another was most intriguing to me. That's interesting. And one of them in particular, she seemed to have a very strong connection with me, and she went ahead, and the other 3 went ahead and said, how come you and Mark, how do you get so connected with him? And so the other 3 wanted to be as connected to me as she was. And she just laughed, and she said, well, just got to know when to take him serious and when not. Very wise advice for somebody like me. Because somebody that's a driver, analytical, very intense, very intentional, and so people often take me too serious. They don't know when to and when not to. And so she had a DNA model where she could just, that's Mark, and just let it go. It's, he's a human being. He's not going to be perfect. It's okay. And I'm going to accept him she was an expressive. And this is when I discovered, she was expressive, and she saw how fun and funny and how amazing I was before anybody else on the planet ever did. I mean, it was just amazing. So what she did is she saw something in me. She saw something in me before other people did. What it was is she actually saw this was her gifts, and she saw that there was a seed, a part of me, that I didn't even know I wanted. I didn't even know was there. And I think everybody does that. I think everybody has that desire. I think everybody that's an amiable wants to have a part that's a driver. Everyone that's a driver wants to have this. Everyone that's an analytical wants to be an expressive. Everyone that's an expressive wants to be an analytical. Not really, but sort of, kind of. And so if you find something in somebody that nobody else has ever found, that's very powerful. That's very, very powerful. And by understanding personalities, you have an understanding. You just go opposite of where they're at. So she saw how fun and funny I was. Nobody else ever had seen that. And then she helped develop that within me. And I'm like, you know what, Mark? You're a pretty funny guy. And I think I am now. I really do. I mean, I think I am. And so everybody has all those gifts, and so help develop those gifts in other people, and that's spectacular in being able to do it. Acceptance, that's number 2. And what I was referring to there is, everybody's got their strengths and weaknesses. Accept somebody. People are looking for acceptance. So amazement, when you sit down with Dee, I could just feel her energy. I'm like, her intensity, her precision, just how she carried herself. I mean, it's like, oh my gracious, she is powerful. I'm going to just, boom, jump into that power. So I just go in, and I'm just like, hey, tell me about yourself. So I kind of moved over into her energy, which she's you know, is unusual. Like most people kind of back away. They're intimidated by people that have, you know, really strong energy. It's like, I'm not intimidated, I'm going in there. That's going to be fun. And then getting to know people, and then looking them right in their eyes. I was taught that by an infant out in Nashville. We're in a restaurant, don't know who this baby was, never met the baby, don't know the parents. I'm sitting in a restaurant, I look over, the baby and I make connection. Eyes, she smiles at me. I smile back. I'm like, isn't that interesting? I'm like, oh my gracious, that's amazing. I just learned something from an infant. How do you connect with people? Look into their eyes and then smile at them. Brilliant. Brilliant. And kids do that all the time. I mean, it's so fun when I go and play basketball and, you know, you're walking down and everybody's looking everywhere else, but the kids are all like, you know, and it's like, wow, that is really neat. That's so much fun. And so being able to do that. And then accelerate it. Accelerate what you're doing. Don't be afraid of deep connections.